speaking of can't spell stupid, Pete Hegseth. Today they had a confirmation hearing. Trump nominated him to be Secretary of Defense. Now, y'all know who Pete Hegseth is. He is a grossly unqualified white man who ain't never, ever run anything in his life. And when he ran a nonprofit, he didn't even know how to run it, couldn't pass audits, absolutely atrocious. Republicans, you ought to see some of these tweets. Oh my goodness, the Democrats didn't land a finger on him. He was amazing today. Now that boy showed how he had no business being nominated, and there's no way in hell he has the credentials to lead the largest federal department. Here's some of what transpired today in the hearing of the completely unqualified, but they think he is superior white man, Pete Hegseth.
I've never disparaged women serving in the military. I respect every single female service member that has put on the uniform, past and present. My critiques, Senator, recently and in the past, and from personal experience, have been instances where I've seen standards lowered, and you mentioned 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo, MOS, places in units, and the book that has been referenced multiple times here, The War on Warriors. I spent months talking to active duty service members, men and women, low ranks, high ranks, combat arms and not combat arms. And what each and every one of them told me, and which personal instances have shown me, is that in ways direct, indirect, overt, and subtle, standards have been changed inside infantry training units, Ranger School, infantry battalions, to ensure that
give
commanders
me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized statements.
Quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women.
Commanders do not have to be quotas for the infantry. Commanders do not have to have a quota for women in the infantry. That does not exist. It does not exist. And your statements are creating the impression that these exist, because they do not. There are not quotas. We want the most lethal force. But I'm telling you, having been here for 15 years, listening to testimony about men and women in combat and the type of operations that were successful in Afghanistan and in Iraq, women were essential for many of those units. When Ranger units went in to find where the terrorists hiding in Afghanistan or in Iraq, if they had a woman in the unit, they could go in, talk to the women in a village, say, where are the terrorists hiding? Where are the weapons hiding? And get crucial information to make sure that we can win that battle. So you cannot denigrate women in general, and your statements do that. We don't want women in the military, especially in combat. What a terrible statement. So please, do not deny that you've made those statements. You have. We take the responsibility of standards very seriously, and we will work with you. I'm equally distressed you would not meet with me before this hearing. We could have covered all of this before you came here, so I could get to the 15 other questions that I want to get to. So women, you have denigrated.
The first one accused you of being a Christian Zionist. I'm not really sure why that is a bad thing. I'm a Christian. I'm a Zionist. Zionism is that the Jewish people deserve a homeland in the ancient Holy Land where they've lived since the dawn of history. Do you consider yourself a Christian Zionist?
Senator, I'm a Christian, and I robustly support the state of Israel and its existential defense, and the way America comes alongside them is a great ally.
Thank you, because another protester, and I think this one was a member of Code Pink, which, by the way, is a Chinese Communist front group these days, said that you support—
What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led, and can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to
the answer is no. Can you name one of the three main ones that the Secretary of Defense signs?
You're talking about defense arrangements. I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't remember to mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified. You talk about repairing our defense industrial complex. You're not qualified to that. You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr. Hegseth, none of those countries are in ASEAN.
Across.
None of those 3 countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations.
I was pleased when I was contacted on your behalf about meeting before this hearing. I've been on this committee since 2011, and during that time, I voted to confirm 6 nominees to be Secretary of Defense from 3 administrations, 2 Democratic and 1 Republican, the first Trump administration. Every one of those nominees met with me and my Democratic colleagues on this committee before the hearing. So, as you can imagine, I was disappointed when no one ever followed up. When we followed up with your office, you were not able to meet. Do you understand that if you're confirmed to be Secretary of Defense, that you will have a responsibility to meet with all members of this committee, not just Republicans?
Senator, I very much appreciate and understand the traditionally bipartisan nature of this committee. Their national defense is not partisan. It should not be about Republicans or Democrats. And so I look forward to working together with you and your colleagues on priorities facing this nation. Yes?
I think we would expect that.
I want to return to the incident that you referenced a minute ago that occurred in Monterey, California in October 2017. At that time, you were still married to your second wife, correct?
I believe so.
And you had just fathered a child by a woman who would later become your third wife, correct?
Senator, I was falsely charged, fully investigated, and completely cleared.
So you think you were completely cleared because you committed no crime. That's your definition of cleared? You had just fathered a child 2 months before by a woman that was not your wife. I am shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared?
Senator,
how is that a complete clear?
Senator, the child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth. And she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she was, and you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges. Well, it was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I am so grateful for the marriage I have to this amazing woman behind me.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual, isn't that correct?
Anything...
You've admitted that it was consensual, and you were still married, and you just had a child by another woman.
Again,
how do you explain your judgment?
Completely false charges against me. You fully investigated, and I was completely clear.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. You've admitted that. Now, if it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
It was a false claim then and a false claim now.
If it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
That was a false claim.
So you
talking about a hypothetical.
So you can't tell me whether someone who has committed a sexual assault is disqualified from being Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I know in my instance, and I'm talking about my instance only, it was a false claim.
But you acknowledge that you cheated on your wife, and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You have admitted that.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves.
You're not retracting that today.
What's the largest number of people you've ever supervised or had in an organization in your career?
Not 3 million. Senator.
No, I don't expect that. Very few people have ever had that experience, but how many? It's a straight up question.
I think we had over 100 full-time staff at Concerned Vets for America, roughly, with thousands of volunteers.
So 100 people.
I was also a headquarters company commander, which would have been a couple of hundred. Nothing remotely near the size of the Defense Department, right. I would acknowledge that.
Actually, not remotely near even a medium-sized company in America, let alone a big company in America, especially a major corporation. And we're hiring you to be the CEO of one of the most complex, largest organizations in the world. We're the board of directors here. I don't know of any corporate board of directors that would hire a CEO for a major company if they came and said, you know, I supervised 100 people before. They'd ask you, well, what kind of experiences you had? We need innovation. Can you give me an experience or your actual experience of driving innovation in an organization? Give me an example of where you have done that.
Oh my goodness, Senator, absolutely. At Concerned Veterans for America, we created the Fixing Veterans Healthcare Task Force, a bipartisan task force that never been done before, to create policy, to drive policy change on Capitol Hill that organizations fought ferociously against. We got the VA Accountability Act passed and the Mission Act passed in a way that a nonprofit of our size, veterans organization, has never done. And that's testified in all the letters that we put forward to the committee, which are on the record.
I have limited time. Thank you for that. Give me an example of where you've driven down cost. I've heard the examples that Senator Blumenthal gave. The cost was a real problem for you in your 50-person organization that you actually raised a lot less than what you actually spent. Did you drive costs down? If in a 50-person organization, let me tell you, we've got to drive costs down dramatically in an organization of 3 million people and hundreds of billions of dollars. You don't have that experience that you can talk about. To me, this is, or acquisition reform. Acquisition reform, you bring that up. Have you had experience in acquisition reform?
I've written about and studied on acquisition reform.
Have you actually done it?
Because what we need in the hands of our warfighters better change, because we're not doing it well right now.
It better, and we need people who have experience actually doing that. You know, you talk about standards. Again, I'm going to go back to CEO of the most complex organization in the world. I don't think there's a board of directors in America that would hire you as a CEO with the kind of experience you have on your resume. You talk about standards. You talk about raising or lower, we have a problem of standards in the DOD, and we have to raise standards for the men and women who serve. Do you think that the way to raise the minimum standards of the people who serve us is to lower the standards for the Secretary of Defense? That we have someone who has never managed an organization more than 100 people is going to come in and manage this incredibly important organization and do it with a professionalism and has no experience that they can tell us that they have actually done that? I have real problems with that. This is not about other issues that are brought up. They're all very important. I'm just about trying to get things done, managing efficiently, and having the best people who have demonstrated that in a large organization. And I'm sorry, but I don't see that in your background. There are a lot of other things you can do very well. You're a capable person, but you have not convinced me that you're able to take on this tremendous responsibility with a complex organization and having little or no significant management experience.
Mustafa, we have to consistently listen to right-wing MAGA people whine and complain about affirmative action, about DEI, who's not qualified. And they literally are standing up and shouting from the roof for wanting this completely, grotesquely, unqualified, unmitigated disaster of a choice, Peter Hegseth, to lead the world's most lethal military. Not only that, the Republicans have refused to allow all members of the committee to have access to his FBI file. They failed to interview the woman that accused him of sexual assault. They did not talk to wife number 1 or wife number 2 or wife number 3. And this man he doesn't have red checks. He doesn't have red flags. He literally has neon signs that go up in New York's Times Square that says, "Do not hire this white man." But they are like, no, Master Trump wants him, so we gotta do what Master Trump says.
I mean, I don't know where you start with something like this. You know, this is one of the toughest jobs that anyone can fill inside of an administration. So you can't be unserious, you can't be unqualified, and you can't be unprepared. You got $1 trillion budget. You have to make decisions about China and the Ukraine and North Korea and a number of other crises and potential crises across the planet. So you got to really know your stuff. You also got to be somebody who understands that you have a very diverse set of folks who are both active duty and civilian workers who are underneath of your charge, underneath of your umbrella. So when you're out there having these conversations, when you're on Fox News or other places talking about DEI and how people are not worthy of some of the jobs that they hold, getting rid of generals, all these different types of things you're saying that are all sort of rooted in racism and misogyny, then how can those folks actually follow you? Now, I have many members in my family who are in the military. We go back almost 100 years that I know about. And it's important in the chain of command of being able to respect the individual who is above you and to know that they have a working knowledge, a set of expertise, really, about what they're asking you to do. Because one, you're putting lives on the line, and two, you're in charge of very important sets of decisions. So this gentleman, he's no Lloyd Austin, right? We've had Lloyd Austin on the show before. We know his resume, how amazing he is. He's not a Chris Miller or a Mark Esper or a James Mattis or Ashton Carter or Chuck Hagel. Many people remember Chuck Hagel, or Leon Panetta or Dom Rumsfeld. All these folks, whether Democrats or Republicans, came with a resume of experiences. Whether we agree with their policies or not, you know, they had been through the fire. And then you bring forward this. Now, the question becomes, we know that there is, I don't know what the number is, 36 million registered Republicans, whatever the number is. Is this the best that you actually have? To put this individual as possibly leading, you know, one of the largest sets of budgets, of sets of actions, of individuals. And then it goes back to what you shared at the beginning of this, Roland. You know, when they talk about DEI or they talk about affirmative action, we know over decade upon decade, century upon century, that there have been unqualified white men who have been pushed into positions and supported. But this is a position where if you're not coming from straight out the gate knowing your stuff, there are others in China, in North Korea, and in Russia, a number of other countries who are going to have individuals who are talented and who know what they're doing. So this is incredibly important, and it makes no sense to have this individual up for this position.
If we want to talk about Gutless, Avis, Joni Ernst, U.S. Senator from Iowa, served in the military, understands personally sexual assault, and now she's going to vote for Pete Hegseth. The Republicans have had a massive pressure campaign against senators to vote for this man. And if you want to see despicable, this is Ari Fleischer, who was the press secretary to George W. Bush, President George W. Bush. Ari, who knows better, tweeted this: Pete Hegseth is crushing it. It is refreshing to hear someone relentlessly focus on warriors and lethality without playing Washington's word salad game of forcing nominees to talk like social workers who run government agencies. And this is how I responded, Avis. This is a joke. If the Dems nominated someone with Pete Hegseth's weak resume and troubled background, Ari Fleischer would be hyperventilating. These Republicans are a joke. And this is the thing that Democrats have to understand. These Republicans forget rules, forget norms, forget institutions. They are in 100% Trump ass kissing mode. And people like Ari Fleischer, who know better, who was the press secretary when 9/11 happened, this man knows when he puts that phone down that Pete Hegseth is barely a good TV anchor or TV host. He damn sure ain't qualified to be Secretary of the Department of Defense. But oh, what it means to be an unqualified white man in America. Because all you need to be qualified as a white man in America is to sit there and go on television with your hair slicked back, nice knot in your tie, and look and smile on TV and say, hey, I love Jesus and I'm a white man in America.
And I hate everybody that's not white. You can't leave that part off. Okay. Here is, you know, it is so infuriating that you have someone, as you mentioned, the least qualified person to ever, as far as I know, be considered for this position. It is absolutely disturbing, given, as you mentioned, the gravity of this position. But we have to understand he wasn't nominated based on qualifications, and he's not the only one. A whole bunch of Trump's nominees, the overwhelming majority of them actually, have nowhere near the level of qualifications that someone would actually need to be competent in the position that they are being nominated within. But they do fulfill one very important qualification. And that most important qualification is they will do whatever the hell Donald Trump wants them to do. That is the only qualification that anybody cares about. This is why the Republicans will vote for someone who is clearly unqualified, because that's what Donald Trump wants. And they don't want President Musk to fund people to run against them. So they're going to go and do whatever Donald Trump, the felon in chief, wants to be done. OK, and this is what we're left with. It is infuriating because at the same time that he is extremely unqualified, he has the unmitigated gall to sit there and talk about wokeness. He has the unmitigated gall to sit there and allude to quotas that don't exist. He has the gall to sit there and talk about, the issue of DEI as if it is such a horrible thing. And the reality is, the reason why there is such a backlash to DE&I is because the existence of that puts a kink in the plan of his reality. Because without that, and prior to that, the norm was to have unqualified white men hogging everything or anything. Like there was no need to have this discussion, right? And so now he has to, he's in this space, he's completely unqualified, and he has the nerve to sit here and talk about other people's qualifications. It's the height of hypocrisy. But once again, it really is America going back to maybe when they believed it was great, because that's certainly a harbinger of that era.
The thing here, again, being that they love to, these people have been trashing the white fire chief in Los Angeles. Well, woman, okay? And then I saw that ignorant fool Megyn Kelly complaining that the two underlings under her were also lesbians. And so, oh my goodness, we got these, we got two white women and one black woman, all three lesbians. Lord, what the hell are we gonna do? And then they want to sit around and they want to yell, who's ignorant, who's incompetent, who has no business being here. And they love saying this stuff about black people. They call Vice President Kamala Harris a DEI hire. So I got no problem saying it. Pete Hegseth is an unqualified white man, and they are chomping at the bit. Then you got Will Cain at Fox News. He just been riding for his boy. But Will Cain is a perfect example. It's no shock Will Cain supporting Pete Hegseth. Will Cain was an unqualified white man when he got a job at ESPN. He only got a job at ESPN because his agent was one of the biggest agents in the business. And so he basically told ESPN, take my boy. That's all that is. And Fox News just gave Will Cain his own show at 4 p.m. when Neil Cavuto retired. So again, Fox News is is filled with unqualified white men who love to talk about other folk not being qualified.
That's the entire season we're living in. And I don't think, well, that's been the American experiment the entire time. We are living at the apex of this, where now the most unqualified person in the history of ever being considered for the position of Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who's also a philanderer, who's also known to be a public drunk, who's also credibly accused of sexual abuse. This is who they are lifting up, and they're saying, you're going to take this, America. I would hope that white people would be able to see how much of a scam white supremacy is, but I'm not putting any stock in that because we made that mistake in the 2024 election. I think that they're going to continue to do this until they ultimately destroy the United States of America. There was an excellent point made that it takes the caliber of leadership and the qualifications for you to get the type of respect that you deserve. And what they're doing with Pete Hegseth, they don't care if he doesn't get any respect. What they care is that he is going to carry out every order of Donald Trump, whether it's constitutional or not, as he was unable to answer that question today. If Donald Trump or if anyone gives him an unconstitutional order, would he carry it out? And he could not answer that. So that lets us know not only are they smearing this in our faces, bringing him, and when you compare resumes to Lloyd Austin, you really kind of have to laugh at just how pathetic this man is. But when you consider his job is to do anything and everything Donald Trump tells him to do, well, of course you want someone who is inexperienced and who isn't loyal to the United States or the military, but loyal to Donald Trump.
And what is truly amazing to me, which I found to be absolutely hilarious. And I just got to play this clip because not only was it a lie, not only he sounded like a fool, but he lied on former Republican and Democrats who have been Secretaries of Defense. Listen to this, y'all.
Now, it is true and has been acknowledged that I don't have a similar biography to defense secretaries of the last 30 years. But as President Trump also told me, we've repeatedly placed people atop the Pentagon with supposedly the right credentials, whether they are retired generals, academics, or defense contractor executives. And where has it gotten us? He believes, and I humbly agree, that it's time to give someone with dust on his boots the helm.
Gotta stop right there. I cannot believe this sumbitch sat there and said that. Lloyd Austin led troops in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. Dust on his boots. You've had Republicans, dust on their boots. And Pete Hegseth is sitting here acting as if, he's been in the armed forces for 30 years and I put in the time. How dare you denigrate the service? You mentioned Chuck Hagel, Republican, dust on his boots. But this arrogant ass sits there and these Republicans, that's right, that's right, that's right, he got dust on his boots. Pete Hegseth is so unqualified that he literally could not hold the jacket of retired four-star General Lloyd Austin, the current Secretary of Defense. He could, matter of fact, if they were in a room having a conversation and if Pete Hegseth started talking, he would give the look that any father, any daddy gives to their son when he look at him like, shut your little dumb young ass up. This man can't even, he don't even know. Senator Tammy Duckworth just exposed his dumb ass. He named 3 countries that wasn't even in the group. And she said, go do some homework. See, here is the mistake. And I know why we do it. I know why we do it. And I understand it. And look, I've been guilty of it. I remember when the Baltimore Sun had this white boy, racist ass TV critic who wrote something on me, said that I wasn't qualified to be on cable news. And I'm like, hell, my resume deeper than yours. And so what ends up happening is we end up responding to, well, I've done this. Let me say this right now. For every black person watching right now, for every Latino watching right now, for every woman watching right now, when one of these ignorant, dumb, nonsensical, trifling MAGA fools, when any of them have the audacity to question your resume,
that's right,
to question whether you have, how did you get into this college? How did you get into this university? How were you able to get this job? I want all of y'all to do exactly what I would do when they say that, which is, quote, the great Della Reese.
I'm sorry about the inconvenience. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Della.
Thank you.
Kiss my entire ass.
Enough said.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $4.8 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.